All right, so a bit of a story time. 5 years ago today, I was a part of a traffic incident that I will forever be able to take lessons away from, and I think that you can maybe take something away from it as well. So we'll start before the incident. So I was, 16, 17-year-old kid, really liked watching YouTube, and I watched a lot of Fieldcraft Survival, and they were always really big on pushing carrying tourniquets, learning how to use tourniquets. So by the time I was 19 at this point, I bought a tourniquet, a Gen 7 cat tourniquet, and I watched some videos on how to use it, and I stuck it in my car. And everybody laughed at me because my circle, that's not something that anybody really done. My family, is not something that, everybody just thought it was weird. Why is a 19-year-old buying a tourniquet and keeping it in their car? And I would always get questions, when are you ever going to need that? And I can remember multiple occasions my specific response was, if I end up in a car wreck or I come upon somebody that's in a car wreck and they're bleeding and, I'm the first one on scene, I need to make it stop. So I think that's pretty likely. And, we'd all just kind of laugh at it and they'd poke at me a little bit, and it was all just in fun. Little did we know that less than 6 months later that I would have to use that tourniquet. And so here's the story on that. So 5 years ago today, me and my sister was coming back from watching a UFC fight with my brother. And so we're driving home. It had been really long night. I think it's like 1 o'clock at this time, just a little past 1 o'clock. And we're just a few miles from home. I'm trying to stay awake. She's been sleeping most of the car ride. She just so happened to wake up at this time as we're passing through what I thought was fog. But she wakes up and she looks. We drove through and she said, "Did you see all that smoke?" I said, I think that was just fog. She said, "I don't know." So hit the brakes, pulled in the driveway, turned around, went back, and when I came back up on it the second time, it was obvious that it was not fog and it was in fact smoke. I could smell it, I could see it, and I looked over to my right in the ditch, and there is a Dodge Ram truck that is almost cut in half on a tree. So obviously, I can tell that it's a really bad situation. So I slam on the brakes, pull over off the side of the road, throw it in park, and tell her, I said, you stay in the car and call mom, let her know where we're at, because she'll be wondering, she'll be waiting up on us. Just let her know we're all right, but we came up on a wreck. Reason being is I didn't want her to see what was going to be left of the person or the people that was driving that truck, because as you can see in the picture, the truck was almost split in half. So I get out of the car, hesitantly walk up around because I didn't know what I was going to see, and by this point another car had pulled up, and when I got around to the other side of the truck, the driver's side of the truck, the door was open. There was a man laying on the ground up against his truck, and I still have not been able to figure this out. He's got blue painter's tape wrapped around his leg, and there's this other man that stopped, and he's on the phone with 911 trying to tell them where we're at. It's the middle of nowhere, and he reeks of marijuana. So he's on the phone with the 911 operator. I'm trying to check on the dude on the ground, make sure he's responsive, asking him his name, his address, what happened, anything I can do to keep him conscious. I can see that he's kind of, he's starting to fade. Asked him if there's anybody we can call, and I made him repeat his parents' phone number to me over and over again, just to keep him alert, keep him thinking, keep him conscious. Meanwhile, that dude's still trying to figure out where we're at. So I told him, I said, "Hey, tell them we're about 1.5 miles up the road from Dollar General on Old Racetrack Road." He said, "All right, cool." So he got that, and then he's out of there. Like I said, he smells like marijuana. He don't want to be a part of it when the first responders show up. So he's out of there. So now I'm standing there on the side of the road, 19 years old, with a dude that is now, I can see, is bleeding out. So I've got a light on him, and I can see his entire pants leg around his knee is absolutely soaked, and it hadn't been raining. So I told him, I said, "Hey man," I said, I think you're bleeding pretty good. Let me go get some trauma shears and let's cut these pants so I can actually get a look at your leg." He said, "All right, yeah, that's cool." Meanwhile, he's talking to his parents, telling them where he's at, and he said, "Hey, I had a wreck." Super calm. I don't think he realized the seriousness of the situation. I ran back to my car and grabbed a tourniquet, grabbed trauma shears, and now my sister's freaking out. Like, oh my gosh, I'm telling him, just stay in the car. He's bleeding out. I've got to get a tourniquet on him, otherwise he's going to die. I said 911's on the way. So I run back over there, get the trauma shears, and I run, cut up his pants, and now I can see that his leg out from under his kneecap is actually pumping blood. I can see the blood getting pumped. So obviously clock's ticking. We're either we've hit an artery or we're right there at an artery, and he's bleeding out, and he's got a couple minutes left, and then he's going to be out of here. So I told him, I said, hey man, this is going to hurt really bad, but I've got to get this on your leg, otherwise you're going to bleed out. We've got to get that bleeding to stop. He said, all right, that's cool. So ran that tourniquet up his leg, tightened it down, as much as I could possibly muster. And now it's just a waiting game. When's EMS going to be here? So it's about 3 minutes after that, EMS comes flying up, and they come running up with flashlights and everything. They're asking me what happened. How did he get out of the truck? Did somebody pull him out of the truck? I don't know. He's out of the truck. When we got here, he said, what's up with the blue painter's tape? I don't know. It was here. It was on him when I showed up. I don't know if that dude put it on or if the man that was in the wreck, I don't know if he put it on. I don't know. I said, I don't know why the blue painter's tape's on there. And so he's like, all right, cool. So he's like, all right, here, hold the light. And I'm holding the light for him, and they're trying to get him up on the stretcher and everything. And I told him, I said, his leg is in bad shape. I said, he's going to bleed out. And they shined it up there and said, well, who put the tourniquet on him? I said, well, I did. They said, really? I said, yeah. I said, he was bleeding out of his leg, and I thought he was going to die, so I put a tourniquet on him to stop the bleeding. They said, that's incredible. I said, if that wouldn't have been on there, he would have probably bled out by the time we got here. That's incredible. And so obviously we can't talk about that too much. We got to get going. This man's about to die. So they get him, and they're checking him out. They're asking about him, and turns out he was a diabetic. What had happened was he had been helping his friend mow hay or bale up hay all day long. He was diabetic. They were trying to beat the rain. He didn't eat like he was supposed to, and on the way home he went into a diabetic coma and hit this tree going about 80 miles an hour, and it shoved the entire engine block of the truck through the cab. Still not sure how he got outside of it. I don't know if he opened the door and fell out, or if that dude opened the door and pulled him out. I don't know that part. What I do know is that this man should have died because there was an engine block sitting in the cab of the truck where he would have been sitting. So after about 5 minutes of EMS getting there, then the flight paramedics show up. So at this point, it's about 15 minutes since I came up on the wreck. So got the tourniquet on him. They've got him on the stretcher. They're talking to him, trying to figure out any information they can. That's when they find out he's diabetic. So the flight paramedics come flying in. They land. They come running up. And the same thing. Who put the tourniquet on him? I said, I did. The way they knew that it wasn't any of them is because they use orange ones, and this was a black tourniquet. And so they're like, who put the tourniquet on him? I did. That's awesome. This guy would have died if the tourniquet wouldn't have been put on him when it was. So they get him loaded up, and they take off. And by this time, the police department, the county showed up, and the volunteer fire department showed up. And so all of them were amazed. Like the police department, they're like, we can't believe that just some random citizen had a tourniquet on them and was able to use it and apply it, and on a stranger. We've never heard of that before. That's awesome. And then the volunteer firefighters, this was really mind-blowing. The volunteer firefighters like, how'd you learn how to use a tourniquet? I said, just watched a couple YouTube videos. We don't have them, and we definitely, if we did have them, we wouldn't know how to use them. I understand you're volunteer firefighters, but why is nobody teaching them how to use tourniquets, and why is nobody giving them tourniquets to use? It's the smallest thing that you keep in your pocket. It takes about 20 minutes of watching a video to learn how to use it. It's not that big of an issue, but it was a huge eye-opener to me that, hey, you can't count on other people to be there to save you. EMS, police department, paramedics, you can't count on them. You're your first responder. You're your own first responder. You're other people's first responders. You've got to make sure that you're prepared for it. So, all that, everything's like, oh my gosh, can't believe you know how to do that. Can't believe you have it. And I'm sitting here thinking, I can't believe y'all don't have this, and I can't believe y'all don't know how to use it. And as a 19-year-old sitting here, like, just now put a tourniquet on a dude's leg and watch flight paramedics come in and take him and said, hey, he would have died if you didn't do what you done. Now, I don't say that to pat myself on the back. I say that because you need to make sure that you're prepared for these types of situations. So they flew off with my tourniquet, and thankfully the EMS guy, he was like, hey, well, since we took yours, we can't really give that back to you because, you know, gentleman over there's kind of using it to stay alive. And so he tossed me this one, actually. This is a Gen 7 North American Rescue Cat Tourniquet, one I recommend you get. If you don't want to carry one that big, then get the Snake Staff Systems EDC tourniquet, little bitty one, basically the same system, is just smaller. So one of the lessons that I took away from this is, now this is probably where a lot of you are going to check out. I believe that there's no such thing as chance or luck or coincidence. I firmly believe that I was steered in that direction. I believe that a lot of things had to take place for me to end up at that place, at that time, that exact moment. The reason being is because I had prepared to be able to apply a tourniquet to somebody. And obviously, after hearing from EMS and the paramedics and the fire department and the police department, and later talking to some of the people at the hospital that were working that shift, that's not a common thing. Not many people out there are taking the time to learn how to use medical equipment and apply it should the need arise. And I firmly believe that since I took the initiative to learn how to do that and I prepared, that God allowed me to be in that situation to help that man. Now, like I said, I'm sure a lot of you are going to check out because I'm talking about God, and that's just the world that we live in now. But I believe that if you apply yourself and you put forth the effort to prepare yourself to be a servant in time of need, that God will orchestrate your life and other people's lives so that y'all cross paths and you can actually be a servant. You can serve them and you can hopefully help them out in that situation. Maybe it's saving a life. Maybe it's just giving them some encouragement to get through another day. And the reason I say this is because I found it in more situations than just this one. When I took the initiative to start studying Scripture on a deeper level and have a better understanding of it, because I wanted to be there when people had questions, or when people, when they needed answers, or they just wanted to ask about it, wanted to talk about it. I wanted to be able to give them something and actually know what I'm talking about. And when I started to apply myself and start learning on a deeper level, I noticed that I was put in more situations where I could be that for people. Now, I strongly believe that it's not simply God calls the equipped, but He equips the called. And I don't think that you have to be equipped or prepared for God to use you. You just simply have to be willing to be sent and be used by God, and He will equip you. However, I also believe that if you apply yourself and you put forth the effort to become equipped to be used by God, that God will orchestrate yours and somebody else's life so that you can actually be used by Him. So I just encourage you, one, get a better understanding of Scripture, and God will put you in the place to actually use it and to help people and to possibly save their life eternally, not just physically here in the world. Also, learn how to use medical equipment. God will orchestrate your life so that you can possibly save somebody's physical life and maybe give them a chance to be saved eternally. Now, obviously, my page is hugely about guns, and that's pretty obvious if you look at my other content, my other videos. But I believe, now just hold on a second if you're still here, I believe that you've got absolutely no business carrying a gun if you do not have the knowledge and you do not have at least one tourniquet. You're far more likely to need to stop bleeding than start bleeding. You need to plug more holes than you need to create. I'm not saying that should be a legal thing and that you shouldn't be allowed to carry a gun unless you can, unless you carry a tourniquet, or unless you can use a tourniquet, because that goes against your constitutional rights. I believe that everybody should be able to carry a gun. But I believe that everybody should learn how to use medical equipment, and at the very minimum, they should learn how to use a tourniquet and keep one at least close by at all times. So I hope you took something from it. Hope you enjoyed the story, and I appreciate you watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.